Picture this. You're out at sea, and the wind has completely died down.
Okay.
You are tied to the wooden mast of your ship. And I don't just mean loosely bound. I mean the heavy ropes are literally biting into your wrists, cutting off your circulation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You are screaming, physically thrashing against the wood, begging the men around you to untie you so you can plunge into the ocean.
Right.
But they can't hear you because their ears are entirely plugged with wax. That is, of course, the iconic image of Odysseus desperately trying to surrender himself to the mythic sirens.
It's such a powerful image.
It really is. And here is the detail that really stopped me in my tracks today. Those beautiful, lethal sirens of Greek myth, they share their name with the modern emergency siren. The one blaring on top of ambulances and police cars.
Right, the one invented back in, 1799?
Exactly, 1799. And they share that name because they both exist for one singular, uncompromising reason, which is to compel your attention against your will.
Yeah, that shared name is definitely no accident. And honestly, it sets the perfect stage for our deep dive today.
It really does.
Because today, we're exploring a genuinely fascinating new book by Chris Hayes called The Sirens Call: How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource.
Such a good title.
Right. And the mission of our conversation today is to unpack how human attention was transformed, basically from a basic evolutionary survival mechanism into the most ruthlessly extracted commodity on the planet.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. We're going to figure out exactly why you, listening right now, probably feel a deep, lingering sense of exhaustion just looking at the screen of your phone.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we hear this phrase all the time, thrown around in every tech article and corporate boardroom, right?
Right.
The whole data is the new oil thing.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah, but the sources we are looking at today argue that this is fundamentally wrong. Because, information is infinite.
Right.
It's everywhere. There's always more of it being created. But your attention, on the other hand, is incredibly scarce.
Exactly. It's a finite biological resource.
Yeah, you only have so many waking seconds in a day. Therefore, the absolute titans of our modern economy, companies like Apple, Meta, Amazon, they aren't really tech companies or data companies.
No, they're not.
They are attention companies.
And that distinction is terrifying when you actually stop to think about the implications.
Oh, totally.
Because while someone stealing your data feels like, a violation of privacy, someone stealing your attention changes the actual texture of your conscious reality.
Wow, yeah.
Your attention is the very substance of your lived experience.
So, to understand how our minds are essentially being hijacked, we first need to look under the hood. We need to break down the mechanics of how the human brain actually processes the world.
Right, because your mind is pulling off this miraculous balancing act every single second.
And you don't even know it's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to understand that balancing act, we have to look at the three distinct phases of attention.
Okay, lay them out for us.
The first is what psychologists call voluntary attention. This is the focus you deliberately choose.
Like when I sit down to read a book.
Yes, or when you're actively listening to a friend across the table. You're using voluntary attention. But what is crucial to understand about the mechanics here is that it works through negation.
Negation? What do you mean by that?
Well, you don't just turn up the volume on the book. Your brain actively burns energy to suppress all the irrelevant stimuli around you. It's an incredible cognitive superpower, really.
Oh, which perfectly explains that famous invisible gorilla experiment from the sources.
Yes, that is the perfect example.
Right. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, people are told to watch a video of students passing a basketball, and they are instructed to count the passes.
Right. They have a specific task.
Exactly. And they get so hyper-focused on the ball, like their brains are working so incredibly hard to suppress everything else in the room that half of them literally do not see a person in a full gorilla suit walk right into the middle of the screen.
They just beat their chest and walk off.
Yeah. And people just miss it entirely.
Because that is the raw power of voluntary attention. But, evolutionarily speaking, if you are too good at suppressing the outside world, you're going to get eaten by a predator while you're, picking berries.
Right. That's not great for survival.
No, it's not. So we have the second phase, which is involuntary attention. Let's use the classic cocktail party analogy for this one.
Okay, I love a good party analogy.
So you are at a crowded party, and you're fully focused on a conversation. That's your voluntary attention at work.
Right.
But suddenly, a waiter, clear across the room, drops a tray of champagne glasses. Crash.
Your head snaps around instantly.
Exactly. You didn't choose to look. That is an evolutionary override. Your brain is constantly running this background program, monitoring for sudden, loud, or bright threats just to keep you alive.
So your brain literally has a built-in tripwire.
That's a great way to put it. But then there is the third phase, and this is where things get slightly terrifying. Social attention.
Okay, terrifying how?
Well, imagine you're at that same loud cocktail party. You are completely tuned out of the surrounding noise, but then from a conversation 30 feet away, amidst all the clinking glasses and chatter, you hear your own name.
Oh yeah, your brain immediately locks onto it.
Right. This is what psychologist Neville Murray identified back in 1959 as the identification paradox. And it implies something staggering about human cognition.
Because, wait, how did you hear your name if you weren't actively listening to that conversation?
Exactly. The mechanism at play means that your brain is secretly wiretapping the entire room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, even while you are consciously focusing on one person, a subconscious sentry in your mind is basically transcribing and scanning every other conversation for keywords, specifically your name.
I mean, it makes total sense when you think about it from a survival standpoint,
Yep.
because human babies are born entirely helpless.
Right, completely dependent.
Like, a baby horse can run a few hours after birth, but a human baby requires years of constant care. If we don't get the attention of our caregivers, we literally die. So being noticed, being the object of social attention, is a hardwired requirement for human survival. It's like voluntary attention is a tight flashlight beam you have to constantly muscle into place.
I like that.
But involuntary attention is a tripwire that anyone can set off. And social attention, that is a heat-seeking missile locked directly onto your ego.
What's fascinating here is how this analogy applies to the modern digital landscape. I mean, think about it. If you are a trillion-dollar company whose entire valuation depends on keeping a user engaged, which of those three types of attention are you going to target?
Oh, you're definitely not going to try to coax that heavy, exhausting flashlight of voluntary attention.
No. You are going to trigger the tripwires and launch the heat-seeking missiles.
Because holding voluntary attention is just incredibly difficult. The sources actually note that even a hijacker with a gun taking people hostage on a plane, like literally a life or death situation, they struggle to keep the hostages from getting bored after a few hours.
Like, you simply cannot force sustained focus.
You just can't.
So tech companies realize this massive shortcut. They don't need to hold your attention for an hour. They just need to relentlessly grab it every 3 seconds.
Just constant grabbing.
If
Which
right.
brings us to what cultural anthropologist Natasha Dow-Schüll calls the machine zone, right?
Yes. She studied this mechanism deeply in the context of casino slot machines.
Okay.
Modern technology abandons the difficult work of holding your focus, like a great novel or a beautifully directed movie tries to do.
Right, that takes effort.
Exactly. Instead, a video game franchise like Call of Duty or, say, your social media feed, it operates exactly like a slot machine.
Bright lights, a moment of suspense, a tiny reward, and then repeat.
You aren't actually focused. You are in a trance of continuous interruption.
It's the infinite scroll.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Azar Raskin, the engineer who actually invented the infinite scroll, where the page just keeps loading as you swipe down so you never hit a natural stopping point.
Right. A brilliant but devious piece of design.
He later realized his invention functioned exactly like the lethal videotape in David Foster Wallace's novel Infinite Jest.
Yeah.
Just this piece of entertainment so perfectly designed to capture your basal instincts that you just sit there consuming it until you wither away.
It's a haunting comparison.
But we have to look at why this works so well on us in the first place.
Yeah.
Then the sources point to something really deep in our psychology, which is boredom.
Right.
Blaise Pascal, the 17th century philosopher, he talked about the king's paradox, the idea that all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to just sit quietly alone in a room.
And we tend to treat boredom like it's a biological given, like it's just a part of being human.
Yeah, we totally do.
But anthropological research challenges that assumption completely.
Yeah.
Boredom might actually be a modern invention.
Wait, really? A modern invention?
Yes. If you look at hunter-gatherer societies, like the Kofan people in the Amazon or the Warlpiri in Australia, anthropologists found they literally do not have a native word for boredom.
That is wild.
They are perfectly content to just sit in a hammock and exist for hours just watching the world go by. Boredom, as a crushing psychological weight, was basically mass-produced by the repetitive, alienated labor of the Industrial Revolution.
Wow.
Once humans were forced into these mind-numbing factory routines, we became conditioned to need constant, high-stimulus diversion just to feel alive.
Okay, but wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Are we really just passive victims of Silicon Valley and the Industrial Revolution here? Because let's go back to Odysseus.
Okay, the guy on the mast.
Right. He wanted to hear the sirens. The goddess Circe explicitly told him he could just plug his ears with wax like the rest of his crew and sail past in total safety.
It's true, he had an out.
He had an out, but he deliberately chose to be tied to the mast so he could listen. Don't we actively want the distraction? Isn't it true that being alone with our own thoughts in the modern world is actually terrifying to us?
Well, that is the tragic core of the issue, really. We actively volunteer for the distraction because the alternative, sitting with our own existential dread, feels worse.
Yeah.
We are desperate to escape our thoughts, so we willingly hand over the very substance of our conscious life.
Which is pretty bleak.
It is. And that leads to a profound societal transformation. Because what happens to the human soul when your attention is chopped up and sold to the highest bidder? This brings in Karl Polanyi's concept of the fictitious commodity.
Right, a fictitious commodity is when you treat something essentially human, something that was never meant to be bought and sold, as a standardized market good.
Exactly. Like treating human time the same way you treat soybeans or barrels of oil.
But how did we actually get to the point where human attention became a tradable commodity in the first place?
Well, the blueprint for this was actually drawn up long before the internet. We have to look back to 1833 to a man named Benjamin Day and his newspaper, The Sun.
The penny press.
It's exactly. Before Day, newspapers were expensive and mostly for the elite. Day decided to sell his paper for a single penny, which meant he was losing money on every single copy printed.
So how did he survive?
He had to invent an entirely new business model. He realized he wasn't selling the newspaper to the readers, he was selling the readers' attention to advertisers.
Which meant he needed to grab as many eyeballs as humanly possible.
Precisely.
He essentially invented modern clickbait. Like, the sources detail how the Sun started printing sensationalist stories about grisly local murders, and they famously ran a completely fabricated multi-part series claiming scientists had discovered Batmen living on the moon.
The Great Moon Hoax.
Yes, people went crazy for it. The truth didn't matter at all. The only metric that mattered was capturing attention to sell ad space.
And if you fast forward to today, that model has been optimized by algorithmic supercomputers.
It's the exact same game, just infinitely faster.
Exactly. And when you commodify attention like that, you abstract it entirely. A second of your time looking at a picture of your child is priced exactly the same in an algorithmic ad auction as a second of your time looking at a political outrage meme.
Wow.
It's all just engagement. And Karl Marx's theory of alienation perfectly describes the psychological toll of this abstraction.
Remind me how Marx framed that.
Marx compared an artisanal cobbler to a factory worker. The cobbler has pride, right? He crafts a whole shoe from start to finish.
He sees the whole process.
Right. But the factory worker just pulls a lever to stamp a sole over and over. He's completely alienated from the final product. Today, it is our brains on the assembly line.
Oh man, think about how you feel after like 45 minutes of mindlessly swiping through TikTok or Instagram reels.
You don't feel rested.
No, you feel hollowed out. That's not just fatigue, that is what Marx meant by alienation. Your brain has been performing micro-labor on an assembly line without your meaningful consent.
It's a really jarring realization.
And the book shares a genuinely surreal example of this modern alienation. And, just looking purely at the human psychology of this, setting aside the politics entirely, think about what happened when the Taliban took over Kabul in 2021.
This is a fascinating case study in the sources.
Right. So you have these pastoral fighters who were used to roaming the mountains, and they were suddenly forced to work 8-to-4 desk jobs in government ministries.
Yeah.
And the result? Total alienation and boredom. They gave interviews complaining about the drudgery and admitted they had literally become addicted to doom scrolling on Twitter just to cope with their desk jobs.
The digital grind comes for absolutely everyone.
It really does.
When you are trapped in drudgery, the slot machine in your pocket is just the most accessible escape valve. But we have to realize that the global attention market that fuels that slot machine is built on incredibly shaky ground.
Okay, actually, I'm struggling to wrap my head around the economics of this split.
Let's break it down.
Because if I'm an advertiser paying for attention, but half of that attention is just bot traffic, or, it's me mindlessly doom scrolling while barely awake, isn't that a fraudulent product?
That's the million-dollar question.
If they are stripping all the humanity out of attention and just trading these anonymous seconds of engagement on global ad markets, this sounds terrifyingly familiar. Like, it sounds exactly like the toxic mortgage bundles from the 2008 housing crisis.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the parallel to the 2008 financial crisis is alarmingly accurate.
Yeah.
And it works through the exact same mechanism.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In the housing crisis, banks hid terrible high-risk mortgages inside bundles of good mortgages, stamped them with a AAA rating, and sold them as premium assets.
Right.
Today, the platforms do the exact same thing with your attention. They bundle a genuine, focused second of you looking at a friend's baby with 3 seconds of a bot clicking a spam ad and a zombified half second of you accidentally watching an autoplay video.
They just mix it all together.
They bundle that all together, call it premium user engagement, and sell it to massive corporations. And because the market treats all attention as mathematically equal, it inevitably creates a race to the bottom.
Because it's easier to grab us with the bad stuff.
Exactly. It is always cheaper to grab attention with lurid, enraging content like Batman on the Moon than it is to hold attention with nuance and beauty.
So what does this all mean? This race to the bottom isn't just ruining the news or making our entertainment shallower. It is fundamentally breaking how we relate to other human beings.
Absolutely.
It traps us in this bizarre cycle of seeking fame from absolute strangers to fill a void that can actually only be filled by real reciprocal human connection.
Right, because the deepest and most vital form of attention is social attention. Remember Nelson Mandela? He wrote extensively about his time in solitary confinement, detailing how the absence of social attention literally destroys the human mind.
Yeah.
He said he would have rather taken a physical beating than be ignored in total isolation. We structurally need to be perceived to feel human.
But the internet provides this synthetic, empty-calorie version of social attention, which is fame.
Yes.
The sources bring in the philosopher Alexander Kojève and his reading of Hegel's master-slave dynamic. Kojève argued that the core human drive isn't just for basic biological survival, it is for recognition. We desperately want to be truly seen as human by another equal human being.
The key word there is equal. True recognition requires vulnerability and mutuality. I see you, and you see me. We acknowledge each other's humanity.
Right.
But what social media provides is the star and the fan paradox. You post a curated photo or a clever thought to thousands of followers, seeking that deep recognition.
Yeah.
But you are in a position of power, performing for an audience.
They can't see the real you, just the avatar.
Exactly. So when they click like, your brain mathematically registers the attention, but your soul doesn't register the connection, because the interaction wasn't mutual. It is fundamentally asymmetrical.
And because of that asymmetry, 1,000 likes will never actually fulfill that deep human need for recognition. But one single negative comment from a stranger will completely ruin your day, because your brain processes it as a literal rejection from the tribe.
It's brutal.
It really makes me think of Arthur Miller's play Death of a Salesman.
Oh, that's a great connection.
The character Willie Loman is driven mad by this exact dynamic. His wife Linda has that heartbreaking plea where she says attention must be paid to him.
Right.
Willie didn't necessarily want to be rich. He just wanted to be noticed. He wanted to feel like he mattered to the strangers he sold to, but he was looking for love in a transactional market.
That we can contrast Willie Loman, a tragic, struggling figure, with someone like Elon Musk, who currently possesses more wealth than almost anyone in human history.
Right.
The sources point out that Musk spent $44 billion to buy Twitter.
Why?
Because, arguably, he possesses a seemingly pathological desire for recognition.
Yeah, he wants to be loved by the crowd.
But he bought a digital machine that is structurally built only to generate attention. He can never actually get the true reciprocal recognition he is starved for, because the platform itself is fundamentally incapable of providing it.
It sounds like Gen Z actually hit the nail on the head when they coined the term thirst trap for social media posts.
That is so true.
We are all wandering through this modern desert of alienation, dying of thirst for real human connection, and the internet just keeps offering us endless glasses of salt water.
We drink it, it triggers our evolutionary tripwires and grabs our attention.
But it leaves us sicker and thirstier than we were before.
The slot machine keeps us pulling the lever, but the jackpot of true connection is an illusion.
Man, we have covered incredible ground today.
We really have.
We We've traced this journey all the way from the evolutionary survival tools of a crying newborn baby to the invention of clickbait with Benjamin Day in the 1830s to the industrial mass production of modern boredom. We've looked at how our minds are bundled into subprime attention and arrived at this tragic realization. We are trading genuine, reciprocal human recognition for the empty calories of digital attention.
It is a profound shift in the human experience. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on a quote from the pioneering psychologist William James that was mentioned at the beginning of the text.
Okay, let's hear it.
James wrote, "My experience is what I agree to attend to." Think about the weight of that. If your life is simply the sum total of what you agree to attend to, who do you actually become when algorithmic supercomputers are making those agreements for you?
Wow.
If you aren't actively choosing your attention, are you even living your own life?
That is a chilling question. We started by picturing Odysseus strapped to the mast, begging to hear the sirens. Today, the sirens are in our pockets, and they know our names. Maybe it's time we start actively choosing when to reach for the wax. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We highly encourage you to try and reclaim just a little bit of your focus today. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.